This assignment has two scenes to it. The first scene is the pitcher, where the pitcher is actually throwing the ball to the batter, and then the second scene will be the batter action where he swings and attempts to hit the ball. Right? So it's actually two assignments, but one altogether. Each part of it is worth 10%. The whole thing altogether is due at the very end of the year, very last class. So essentially you've got 1 month to do this assignment from now, okay? Which is a ton of time. And my suggestion is that you don't waste this first week, that you actually start to plan out your key poses throughout this week. And all I'm asking for at this point is just your broad main key poses. If you want to add in secondary poses, you can, but it's not absolutely necessary. We'll talk about secondary and key poses next week in specific detail. So, the action is that the character on the one side is going to be throwing. Now, the character design for this, once again, I mentioned this to you earlier, is that you can take two established characters if you want to, or you can create two characters of your own. The only specific things that I'm asking for on this is that they be opposite type of characters. Okay? So if the one character who's pitching is a big character, the character who's batting must be a small character. Okay? If the one character is tall, the other character must be short. If the one character is fat, the other character has to be thin. All right? So I want opposite types of characters on this. And you can switch it up either way you want. Right? You could have a tall, fat character that's pitching, or you can have a tall, fat character that's batting. Totally up to you. Now, when you set up your fielding for this, what I want is one character on 1/3, or again, you're going to have to plan out the action. The character who's pitching should be on one side of the screen, the pitcher who's batting should be on the opposing side of the screen. So if you choose to use the rule of thirds, your one character will be on 1/3 on one side, the other character will be on 1/3 on the other side. Now the pitching action for this is basically the character, and again, you choose how your start position is going to be. So there are multiple different ways of throwing a ball, obviously, and the core action has to be what I'm going to ask for, but the method of how you get the character to actually throw the ball will be up to you, depending on how your character is, what their attitude is, and what their physical makeup is. Right? You have to decide that. So you can have your character in the pitch taking an aggressive stance, which means that they're basically staring down the batter by leaning over like this. That would be sort of like a standard pitching pose. And then what your character is going to do from this position is they're going to come up into a ready pose here. Okay? This pose, this ready pose, must be in everybody's animation. Right? How you get to this pose is up to you. So if you've got your start pose like this, you can start like that. If you want to have your character relax like this, you can have them relax back like that. But they have to come up into this ready position here. Okay? So how you get there is totally up to you. Whatever your start position is, it depends on the attitude. Right? So once you come up to this ready position, we're now going to go through the basic mechanics. And all the mechanics have to be the same. But again, how you get there can change, and we'll talk about how that's different. So from this ready position, your character is then going to anticipate by shifting their weight. So this is similar to what we did in the sidestep assignment, where you got to pop your hip first, and what we want to do is we want to lift the leg that's going to be pointing in the direction or leading in the action going forward. Right? So the overall action will be this. Character steps forward and throws and then follows through. Okay? That's your basic action. So with the character in the ready position, they have to anticipate to lift their leg up into the air. How far your character lifts their leg, I'll leave that again completely up to you. Right? But the character does have to lift their leg. If you want to, you can have your character lift their leg forward like this. You can have your character cross their leg back like this. Okay? You can have their character lift their leg, I'm not going to do it because it hurt, but you can have your character lift their leg straight up in the air, so they're doing the splits. Okay? I don't care how far you take it. Okay? Just have fun with it. So your character is going to anticipate up into that high point. Let's just say they come across like this. Then what they're going to do, and this is one of the requirements of the assignment, is we're going to have what's called successive breaking of joints. We're going to have multiple different things take place at different times. It's overlapping action. Okay, it's the same theory, but in this we have to take this through the body one step at a time. So when your character comes into this anticipation pose, what we're then going to do is we're going to kick the character out like this. This will be your auxiliary anticipation, where you go and stretch into this far position here. And then your character is then going to step. Okay, want you to notice the direction of my pelvis, and my body is in this direction over here. Okay. What I'm going to end up with in the end is this position here, where my body is torqued across my legs. Right? So right now, when I go to this position here, I'm pushing this arm over in this position here, and my body is now facing in that direction, 3/4 rear view. So I want to torque and twist my entire torso. You can't throw a ball effectively like this. Okay. It's a shot put, and it's not going to have the power that it needs. So we want to take our character from a torquing position like this. We're going to torque, plant the foot, and then we're going to pop the hips over. So we've got foot, hips, my chest is still going to be back in this position, and then we're going to pull the body over into seaweed action like this, and follow through and across the body like that. Okay? So that's your overall action. So you've got anticipation, step, hip, shoulder, follow through like this, and then you're going to step once. And that's where you cut the seam. Okay? So all I need is just to that step position where you hit, and then we're done. Now, the method of getting through to that position, again, I will leave that completely up to you, because there are multiple different ways of throwing a ball. Right? The standard way is overhand like that, okay? Which creates this action where if you slow down a pitcher's action, what's happening is they'll do that torque, because that gives the power to the throw. But what they'll do is they'll pop, and their elbow will lead first like this. So it's the drag action, okay, which is our tail with the ball. Okay. So it's dragging like this, and then you get the snap over into that position there. So that's an overhand throw. You'll see some pitchers, they'll do a sidearm, okay, depending on how their shoulders. That's the way I throw. Because if I go overhand, there's something wrong with my shoulder, and it just sort of clicks in that upper position. So I have to do a sidearm throw, right? Then there's underhanded, where you go down and around like this, okay? So you choose which method of throwing you want to use. I'll leave it completely up to you, right? But it's got to be a fast throw.
And the elbow has to lead the action.
And the elbow has to lead in every single last one, okay? There has to be that drag action. Otherwise, if you don't, it turns into a shot put, and I don't want that, okay? So we're trying to exaggerate the overlapping action within the entire assignment, all right? So successive breaking of joints through the body, from top right down through the bottom, or sorry, from bottom through to the top, where your character's torquing, you pop the hip after the leg plant, so you're gonna get that step. Notice the heel is up, and then once your foot comes down, you pop the hip, and you start to drive off of the back leg. When you're driving off the back leg, that's when you torque your shoulder over, and then you follow through elbow, and then through to that position, right? So your primary keys in this assignment, which I'm hoping that you will have ready for next week, are your first primary pose, whatever you're choosing to get your character to start from. Okay, it can be this position here, it can be back like this, you can have a character nonchalant, picking their nose, or biting their fingernails. They could be looking back in the opposite direction, right? So primary first pose, up into your ready position. That's your next primary pose. We're going to get our torque, leg anticipation. That's your third key pose. And then we're going to come forward like this into this stretch position here. Okay, so that's heel down, plant your foot, and arm back in its extreme back position as far as it's going to go. Watch the action here on my hand. Up like this, I'm torquing. Okay, I go back like that. My leg is going forward, my hand goes back into its full extension. What you should be looking for in this pose is a very strong line of action running through the character. We talked about this earlier. Okay, you want to either have an S curve or a C curve running through your character. So in this case here, we're going to have a strong S curve here, okay, because when your character comes up, look at the curve. My body is going like this, then we go to a C curve through here, pulling your arm all the way through to this foot, out like this, and then we're going to go through. Now, I'm not going to worry about what our transition pose is here and the successive breaking of joints. Right? If you want to break those poses down, you can at this point, but those are secondary keys. Right? So I leave that up to you for this week, but I want the primary key poses. Key pose out like this, and then I want the forward key position out like this. And again, this is going to be a really strong S curve running through the entire body, where your line of action is running up and over through here, through the body, and out through the leg. Okay, So you can see the back of my leg here is curving this way, up like that. That's your S curve. Okay. So with that really strong S curve running through there, this is a release position. Okay, the ball will not be in the character's hand in this position here. Okay. The ball should leave in the drawing just before it, which will be a breakdown in between. It'll leave at this point here, and that's the follow through down the hand. Okay. So if you want to indicate the ball, you can indicate it as a stream smear taking off out the edge of the screen. You can do that. Okay. So we go into that position right there, and then we're going to come forward out of it and step. Okay. So it's just a single step. So your final key position will be this position here. Okay. So how many key positions do we have? We got our first, 1, 2, ready, 3, the torque, 4, the extreme out position, 5, and 6. Okay? So 6 key poses for the pitch.